What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be discussing UFC 300, and we're going to rank every fight on the card from worst to best. And a few things before we get into it. I'm sorry if you could hear something out that window. I don't think you should, but it's so hot in my room right now. I got to keep it open. And try to get me to a thousand subscribers, excuse me. I'd love to hit 1,000 subscribers on this account. I know you guys could do it. We're only like 650 away, so let's get there. I'd appreciate it a lot. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and let's just jump right into this. Why not? So for this video, we're gonna have tiers for each fight, right? We're gonna start off with the what even is this tier. We're gonna go on to the meh tier. We're then gonna go on to the good tier, the banger tier, the big implications tier, and then of course at the end, we're going to go to S tier. So let's start it off at the bottom with the what even is this tier. And you guys might not like my choice as the worst fight on UFC 300, but it is Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage. This fight, I'm sorry, it absolutely sucks. It really, really sucks. In terms of there's no, competitiveness in this fight. We know Bo Nickal is going to go out there and he's going to knock out or submit Cody Brundage in the first round. Cody Brundage shouldn't even be in the UFC. Now, I don't want to, shit talk Cody Brundage. He is a UFC fighter at the end of the day, and he is, better than 99.9% of the world at fighting, but he is simply not UFC caliber. And it's clear that, in my opinion at least, the UFC are just using this fight for Bo Nickal to just build him into a star. They put him on the main card to, make him get a flash KO, right? He's going to get a flash KO on the main card, and then, boom, it's going to go viral on Bleacher Report, ESPN, everywhere, on Instagram, and then he's going to gain a lot of traction, which I think is smart, sure, and I think the Bo Nickal fans, if this makes sense, are the ones that would buy pay-per-views rather than a guy like Sean O'Malley's fans, if that makes sense. I feel like, the wrestling dads, with the college sons or the high school sons, they're going to buy the pay-per-view. So I don't think it's that bad of an idea. But in terms of the fight itself, it's really bad. Bo Nickal's coming off of a KO victory over Val Woodburn. Wasn't competitive at all. Ended in 38 seconds. And then Cody Brundage is, coming off of 2 wins. But Jacob Malkoun, he got a disqualification victory. And then Zach Reese, he won by a KO. And that was pretty crazy because that was a slam. But it's still not going to be competitive. It's not going to be competitive at all. Cody Brundage is going to get destroyed in this fight. And I'd say probably under a minute. Probably under a minute. And I think Bo Nickal could probably come into this fight off the couch. I don't think he needs a training camp, and I think he'd still win. So the only fight in the what even is this tier is Cody Brundage and Bo Nickal. Now, let's move on to the meh tier. This is a fight where it's just meh. Is it UFC 300 quality? Probably not, but it's here and we got to live with it. And the fight I'm talking about is Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. Now, it's not an awful fight. By any means, it's not awful, but for UFC 300, I just don't think, it's up there. Jessica Andrade, of course, a legend. She was, on a little bit of a losing streak. Then she got a big win over Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern's just a weird fighter. She's simply just a weird fighter. And then Marina Rodriguez had a pretty decent win over Michelle Waterson. So it's a decent fight, but at the same time, it's just not UFC 300 quality. And I'm not going to shit on the fight too much because, as I said, it's a good fight. I just would have liked to see, a different fight on this card. So that's the only fight in the meh tier. That's the only fight. Now let's move on, to the good tier. These are fights that are just good. They're good fights. They're all right for the prelims of UFC 300. And we're gonna go to Bobby Green versus Jim Miller. It's a good fight. 2 legends, I guess you could say. Bobby Green coming off of a loss to Jalen Turner. Would you call it a loss? I don't really know. More of like a just absolute destruction and just you guys know what I'm talking about. That was one of the worst stoppages I think I've ever seen in the UFC. Ever. That might be the worst stoppage in UFC history. But that's besides the point. Jim Miller coming off of 2 wins, two two nice submission wins, or not submission wins, submission and a KO victory. Excuse me, I was rubbing my nose because I'm a little stuffy. But this is a fun fight. It's a fun fight to get, the fans going, to get the UFC 300 card going. And I think Jim Miller is probably going to win, if I'm going to be honest. But just a fun fight for UFC 300. Nothing crazy, but I'm not going to hate on it too much. Next up in the good tier, we're almost out of the good tier. This is the final fight on the good tier. We have Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. Now, the reason I put this above Bobby Green and Jim Miller, I know some of you guys, might disagree with that, is because I'm very interested to see how Kayla Harrison, does in the UFC. I'm kind of excited for her debut. Holly Holm, she's washed, if I'm going to be completely honest. The Mayra Bueno Silva, she lost that fight, but it got overturned because Mayra Bueno Silva was popping, but she's washed. I think it's just a good fight. I'm sorry, I was just reading a text from my dad about the Knicks, but let's move on. We're recording a video here. Holly Holm's washed, but I think this is a good fight for Kayla Harrison just to get her, into the UFC. Maybe she gets a big finish. Maybe it does well. Maybe boost her stardom in mixed martial arts just a little bit. Get people a little bit excited for her next few fights, right? So it's a good one. She's coming off of a win against Aspen Ladd. That was a decision, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just interested to see how she's going to be in the UFC. She's very skilled. She's huge. She's very big for the weight class. So I think it's just a fun fight. It's a very interesting fight. I'm looking at it through a little, what are those things called? Geez, I don't know how the word microscope. I'm looking at it through a microscope just to see how Kayla Harrison does. So I'm pretty excited for that one. And that's in the good tier. We're now moving out of the good tier. So good tiers here, we're moving, above the screen. These fights now are all bangers, okay? We're in the banger tier. And to start us off in the banger tier, we have Jalen Turner versus Renato Moicano. Wow. This is a sick fight, ladies and gentlemen. This is a really good fight. Jalen Turner obviously coming off of that awful victory over Bobby Green, not in the sense of his performance was awful, but you get my point, right? And I think Jalen Turner is super underrated. I wouldn't say super underrated, right? But I think he's a slick striker. He's got a lot of skill, and I think maybe one day he could be in the top 5, maybe pushing top 5. I think he's pretty skilled. He has a ground game, which is kind of underrated. And then Renato Moicano coming off of 2 decent wins. Drew Dober, decent win. Brad Riddell is meh, but he got the submission victory. 2 guys who have great personalities. It's going to be a banger. It's going to be a great fight. I could see it being a war. I'm going to go with Jalen Turner just because I think he's the better fighter, and I think he'll be able to pick Renato Moicano up on the feet, or pick him apart on the feet, excuse me. But I'm excited for this one. I think it's really, really good. I'm looking right now. Renato Moicano has only lost 2 fights since 2020, and one being to Rafael Fiziev and the other being to RDA. So he hasn't really lost all that much. And then, lost to Chan Sung Jung, lost to Jose Aldo. So he's lost to high-level guys. So this is going to be a good fight. I think it's a perfect fight for UFC 300. It's something, maybe the hardcore fans are going to like a lot. I personally love this fight, and I think it just makes sense for UFC 300. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's just a good prelim fight for UFC 300. Moving on to the next fight on my ranking. Some of you guys are probably going to put this higher, right? But I have Davison Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt. This is a banger. Definition of a banger. But the only reason I'm not putting it higher is because I just don't think it's going to be too competitive. I really don't think it's going to be too competitive, guys. I think Davison Figueiredo, I called him Davidson, not the college, Davison Figueiredo. I think he's just going to knock out Cody Garbrandt. I'm going to be completely honest. In terms of, skill set right now, I think he's just so much better than Cody Garbrandt. Of course, Cody Garbrandt is on a winning streak, but he hasn't really beaten too many high-level guys. His last fight, Brian Kelleher, Trevin Jones, he just hasn't beat these really good guys, and I think his chin is still not there. And then against a guy like Davison Figueiredo, who has so much power and who looked really, really good in his bantamweight debut against Rob Font, I think he's just gonna dog walk. Cody Garbrandt. But regardless, Cody Garbrandt does have a puncher's chance, more than a puncher's chance. He's still very skilled, but I just think there's a disparity in this fight, and I think it won't be all too competitive, but it's still a good fight. Still a good fight. Has some implications for the bantamweight division. If Davison Figueiredo can get a victory here, he's probably fighting inside the top 5. Maybe that's a push. I'm not too sure. We got to see where the bantamweight division goes. But if Cody Garbrandt wins, I mean, wow. If Cody Garbrandt wins, that'd be crazy for the MMA community. He'd be back up in there into almost title contention. I think he still probably needs to get 2, maybe even 3 more wins. But I wouldn't be all too surprised if maybe the UFC wants to push a Cody Garbrandt versus Sean O'Malley in the future. That fight's absolutely massive. Overall, good fight. However, I think Davison Figueiredo is going to knock out Cody Garbrandt. Moving on to the last fight in the banger tier. Wow, we're running through it. And sorry if I'm looking this way. I see myself in my camera. I got to start looking over here. I'm sorry. We're still getting the gist of the whole YouTube thing. So, regardless, last fight on the banger tier, we have Sodiq Yusuff versus Diego Lopes. If Diego Lopes is fighting, it's a banger of a fight. This dude is so high level, and I just love watching him fight. I was able to see his UFC debut against Movsar Evloev in person. What a crazy fight. The dude's already a fan favorite. I think he's the hardcore's fan favorite. Of course, he lost to Movsar Evloev, but then came back, destroyed Gavin Tucker with that crazy submission, and then destroyed Pat Sabatini, who a lot of people thought could maybe even beat Diego Lopes, but he knocked him out in the first round. And then we have Sodiq Yusuff coming off of a close loss to Edson Barbosa, and then just wins. He's been winning pretty much throughout his UFC career. His only other loss is to Arnold Allen, but he always brings it, and this is going to be an absolute banger, boys. This is going to be a banger. Pretty much me, in my opinion, I'm just so excited to see Diego Lopes fight again. This dude has one of the most just interesting and fun fighting styles I've seen in the UFC in recent memory. I think he has, chances of becoming a future champion. I think he really has chance of becoming a future champion. I think he's that good. He showed he could do it on the feet, and then he has a nasty, nasty grappling game. So I can't wait for this fight. I cannot wait. And you never know. Sodiq Yusuff's a dog. Sodiq Yusuff is a dog, and you never know what he could do. He doesn't have that much, finishing capability, but he has power. However, I just think Sodiq Yusuff is just not on the level of Diego Lopes, and I think Diego Lopes is finally going to get that big win and, start to fight these higher level guys, right? All right, that's it for the banger tier. We're going to move on to the big implications tier, and of course, this is just fights that have big implications for the division, right? First up, Yuri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. Now, in terms of the fight itself, this could be, higher up on the tier list. However, a fight like Aljamain Sterling and Calvin Kattar, I'm more interested to see where both guys go from there. I'm interested to see what Calvin Kattar does if he wins. I'm very interested to see if Aljamain Sterling, becomes a champion at featherweight. What does he do if he wins against Calvin Kattar? How is he going to look in his featherweight debut? I just feel like there's a lot more question marks that I'd like to see get answered in a fight like Aljamain Sterling and Calvin Kattar. So that's why I have it above Prochazka and Rakic. But regardless, man, I don't really need to talk too much about this. Yuri Prochazka, coming off of a loss against Alex Pereira. Really good fight. He had some moments in that fight. Maybe an early stoppage, but I'm not going to complain about it too much. One of the most, I don't even know how to say it, just one of the most exciting UFC fighters I've ever seen. One of the most exciting styles, one of the most exciting personalities we've ever seen in the UFC. And it's crazy how this dude's on the prelims. This dude is on the prelims, and he headlined at Madison Square Garden a few months ago. It's insane. Somehow people are saying UFC 299 is better than UFC 300. You're out of your damn mind. You're out of your damn mind. So I'm just very interested to see. I say interested a lot, but I'm interested in the sport. So let me be. I'm just interested to see where Yuri Prohaska, improves in his game. Rakic is a tough stylistic matchup for Yuri, so it'll be nice to see, where he improves. Does his striking defenses improve? Does he use his grappling more against a guy like Alexander Rakic? And Alexander Rakic is coming off of a nasty, nasty injury, and he's finally back, and he's getting a big, big fight against Yuri Prohaska. And I think he's a tough stylistic matchup. As I said, I feel like he can incorporate those leg kicks a lot. He has some nasty, nasty leg kicks, and I think that could give Yuri a lot of problems. We saw that in the Alex Pereira fight. Pereira gave him so many problems with that low calf kick, and I feel like Alexander Rakic could look at that and be like, okay, I think I could do a similar thing to Yuri in this fight. I think he could incorporate his wrestling. I think he's probably a better wrestler than Yuri. So it's a very, very fun fight. Could end in a finish. Not too sure. If Rakic wins, I think he'll probably win by decision. But if Yuri gets a flash KO, it'd be so sick to end off the prelims. So that's an absolute banger of a fight and has a lot of implications for the light heavyweight division. If Yuri Prohaska maybe wins, does he get to fight for the title once again? And then if Alexander Rakic wins, I'm guessing he's fighting for the title. I'm guessing he's fighting for the title. Next up, Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling. Wow, this is a really good fight. I really, really like this fight. Calvin Kattar once again coming off of an injury. How will he look in his return against Aljamain Sterling, who's making his debut at 145? Calvin Kattar, I always thought, was an underrated fighter. A lot of people think Calvin Kattar and they think of that fight against Max Holloway, but it's kind of disrespectful to Calvin Kattar because he's so skilled in his own right. He has really crisp boxing, and I feel like that could give a guy like Aljamain Sterling a lot of problems in this fight. I'm super excited to see Aljo at 145. Can his grappling be as dominant in this bigger weight class? I saw a few pictures of Aljo. He's looking absolutely massive, as we expected, but just very excited for this fight. I think Aljo took a good layoff after that Sean O'Malley loss, took, a good enough time to bulk up, be a true natural 145er. One thing I'm keeping a close eye on is how he enters the pocket. This is Aljamain Sterling. Not the best striking defense, so I want to see that improve because it's going to have to if he wants to beat Calvin Kattar. I think Calvin Kattar is a tough stylistic matchup for Aljamain Sterling. His boxing's really, really good. His takedown defense, is really, really good. So I think he could give Aljo a lot of problems. And if he wins this, he's going to be fighting, he's going to be fighting a big, big fight again after this. Of course, Aljo's a big fight, but if he beats Aljo, he should be fighting up there in the featherweight division. And if Aljo wins, he's probably one fight away from a title shot, maybe two, because I think he deserves to be getting a little bit fast-tracked in the 145-pound division because Volk cleared everybody out. There's not that many clear-cut challengers, and he's a former champion who just lost. So it'll be very interesting to see how Aljo does at 145. Super excited for that. Next up, we're still in the big implications tier. We have Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. Underrated fight. Underrated fight once again. Two Chinese fighters going at it for the championship. Never before seen, and that's something that excites me. I think Yan Xiaonan is a pretty underrated women's fighter. She has got a lot of power coming off of that win against Jessica Andrade. Took a lot of time off. That was in May of last year, so she took some time off. Hopefully improved her game because she has a big test ahead of her. She has a really big test ahead of her. Zhang Weili might be the best women's fighter I've ever seen. I'm going to be completely honest. In terms of skill set, she might be one of the best, if not the best I've ever seen. She absolutely destroyed Amanda Lemos in one of the most dominant UFC title performances I've ever seen. She has everything, man. She could grapple, she could wrestle, she could strike. She is so damn good. She's one of my favorite fighters. Zhang Weili is incredible. I want to see her fight maybe an Alexa Grasso if she wins this. I think that's a super fight where a lot of fans would be happy. That's one of the biggest women's MMA fights of all time. That's such a good fight because Alexa Grasso is still so good. I like her too. I'm a big fan of her. but she can't overlook Yan Xiaonan because she brings a lot of, power and threat in this fight. However, I just think Yan Xiaonan, or Zhang Weili, excuse me, is going to get it done. But still a really cool fight. Chinese versus Chinese, really cool. And it's just a fun fight, man. It's just a fun fight. So let's move on to the end of the big implications tier, excuse me. I'm sorry if I'm slurring my words. I'm tired. I had like 4 classes today, but you guys are probably going to be mad with this one. I'm going to be honest. Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje is still in the big implications tier. It's not an S tier. I'm sorry, but I just think Justin Gaethje is going to destroy Max Holloway. I really, really am. Maybe this is an S tier. Maybe it's an S tier fight. Fuck it. You want to put it in an S tier? You can put it in S tier. In terms of the fight, it's S tier, but I just don't think it's going to be that competitive. I feel like Gaethje is going to just chop away the legs of Max Holloway, and I think he's just going to put it on him. And I think there's a real chance that Gaethje finishes Holloway and knocks out Holloway, which would be insane. And that's another thing which kind of sucks because I don't want to see any of these guys lose. I'm a big fan of Gaethje. Of course, a big fan of Holloway. Holloway's one of my favorite fighters of all time. But I just think Justin Gaethje is just too powerful, big, just a natural 155er for Max Holloway. But Max Holloway's looking real big. Max Holloway's looking really big in, pictures I've seen. If he gets this bulk right, and he's looking big and he looks like a 145er, this fight could go, in a completely different direction. If Max Holloway is walking into that octagon big, this fight's S tier. But if he's kind of looking a little frail, looking a little skinny, I think Gaethje's just going to absolutely destroy him. It's for the BMF belt, of course. Gaethje's been on an absolute roll recently. Fiziev win, and then, of course, that Dustin Poirier win. And then Holloway, we know everything about Holloway. He just destroys everybody not named Alexander Volkanovski. And I want to see Holloway look big because that would be sick. Imagine a Max Holloway. Imagine Max Holloway beats Justin Gaethje. Imagine Max Holloway beats Justin Gaethje. Does he sit out for the next title shot? I think he has to. In this point in his career, a win over Justin Gaethje gets you a title shot no matter what. I don't think he'd go back to featherweight because I feel like Ilia Topuria is going to be fighting maybe Sean O'Malley. No, because Sean O'Malley's probably going to fight Merab. But I don't really know who Topuria is going to fight. So let's kind of leave him out of the equation. If Max wins, I think he's going to stay at lightweight. Because if he wins, I think that means he's going to have a good bulk up and he's going to look like a natural 145er. So I don't think he'll want to make that cut back down. So if Max Holloway wins, I don't think we'll ever see him at featherweight again, which is very, very interesting. I like this fight a lot, of course. Why wouldn't I like this fight? But if I have to be realistic, I do think Justin Gaethje is just going to chop the legs of Max Holloway, land that jab, land that straight, maybe land the hook uppercut combo, and I think he's just going to really hurt Max Holloway. If he doesn't KO him, I could see a doctor stoppage or like a just ref getting into it. I don't know who's reffing it. Maybe Herb Dean. Maybe Herb Dean stops it. I could see that being a real possibility. But this fight's S tier if Max Holloway is big. That's all I'll say. If he's looking big, this is S tier. Now, let's actually move on to the S tier fights. We have 2 fights in the S tier. Of course, you could guess which ones they are. I was very close to putting this fight above the one I have at number 1, if that makes sense. The fight is Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan. Charles Oliveira is my favorite fighter ever. I don't really need to say much more. Everybody knows just how fun, good, exciting Charles Oliveira is. And I think he's going to win. I think he's going to beat Arman Tsarukyan. I think Arman leaves himself too open on the feet. I think Charles Oliveira is going to hurt Arman on the feet, and Arman's going to go for a lazy takedown. Maybe Charles gets that guillotine in, or maybe he reverses the position, kind of pushes Arman off out of the clinch, and maybe throws a knee to the head or something like that. Or maybe Arman even gets the takedown, but he's really hurt, and then Charles is throwing up, submission attempts. I could see that, but still, this fight's absolutely sick. I wouldn't be all too surprised if Arman gets it done, but I think Charles is just better everywhere. Literally better everywhere. Maybe a pure wrestler, maybe Arman's better, but everywhere else, Charles is better. And yeah, if Charles Oliveira is fighting, it's an S tier fight. I don't really need to say much more. His only loss in how many years? Wait, let me take a look. Okay, I don't have it pulled up because I'm an idiot. But his last loss was to, who is Charles's last loss to? Paul Felder? Was it Paul Felder? Might get that wrong. But that was like, I don't even know, 8 years ago. Besides Islam Makhachev, Charles is just running through everybody, and I don't see that stopping. He absolutely destroyed Beneil Dariush. Of course, Arman did too, but Beneil's not, nothing crazy. I think Charles is too clean on the feet, too crisp. I could see Arman overextending. I think the pressure of Charles is going to be too much. But regardless, the fight's going to be an absolute war, most likely. I see Charles finishing it in the first 2 rounds, like he always does. Sick fight. Now let's move on to the best fight on UFC 300. And wrapping up the video and wrapping up S tier, I have Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. Anybody saying this fight isn't a good UFC 300 headliner, you're out of your mind. This fight is so good. Alex Pereira, the new light heavyweight champion, knocked out Yuri Prochazka. And then we have a storyline here, of course. Jamal Hill ruptures his Achilles or tore his Achilles, I'm not sure. And now he's coming back to fight for that title that was once his. Super fun fight. I think it's pretty close. I'm going to go with Alex Pereira. I think he's just so much better than Jamal Hill on the feet. I think Jamal Hill leaves too many openings on the feet. I think he overextends a little bit. I think he leaves his hand down when he's... Let's restart. I think he leaves his hands down when he enters the pocket sometimes. And I think Alex Pereira is going to catch him. I think Alex could finish him in maybe round 3, maybe round 2. I think Alex is going to make it look a little bit easier than a lot of people are saying. I think he's going to pick apart Jamal Hill. He's just the best kickboxer we've ever seen in the UFC, maybe. He really might be the best kickboxer we've ever seen. The way he just meticulously destroyed Yuri Prochazka was incredible. And I even saw it before their fight. I had a really good prediction. I'm not trying to, I don't even know what the word is. Trying to like gas myself up. But I had a really good prediction for that fight. Yuri Prochazka leaves his right hand down when he enters the pocket to throw the straight. And Yuri Prochazka, he was I don't even know what the word is. I'm getting tired of it. It's a 30-minute recording. Alex Pereira caught him pretty much. That's what I'm trying to say. Alex Pereira caught him because he's one of the best strikers ever. And I'm just excited for this fight, man. Jamal Hill could cause Alex Pereira problems. I feel like if you have good defensive boxing, good defensive kickboxing, and if you apply a lot of pressure to Alex Pereira, you could get it done. The 1-2 could be huge for Jamal Hill. Israel Adesanya incorporated that a lot in this fight and had a lot of success with it. So I feel like if Jamal Hill could keep the guard high, prevent a lot of low kicks, don't overextend, but continue to pressure Alex Pereira, throw the 1-2, I think he could find a lot of success in this fight. However, I'm going to go with Alex Pereira by knockout. This is still such a sick fight. If Jamal Hill wins, wow. Just wow. And if Alex Pereira wins, yeah, this dude's simply incredible. My friend's calling me. Whatever. Alex Pereira, if he wins, who does he fight next? Maybe a Magomed Ankalaev. I think that would be a really fun fight. All right, I'm wrapping up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let's go through my ranking once again. So in the what even is this tier list, we have, or in the what even is this tier, we have Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. In the meh tier, we have Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. In the good tier, we have Bobby Green versus Jim Miller and Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. In the banger tier, we have Jalen Turner versus Renato Moicano, Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt, and Sadiq Youssef versus Diego Lopez. In the big implications tier, we have Yuri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic, Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling, Zhang Wei Li versus Yan Xiaonan, Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway, and then wrapping it up in the S tier, we have Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan and Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. I cannot wait for UFC 300, the best fight card of all time. I hope you guys enjoyed. Get me to 1,000 subscribers. I'd really appreciate it. And one last thing. I'm sorry if I'm not the best talking in front of, the camera. The YouTube thing is a lot different than the TikTok thing. I'm going to be honest. So, and I'm also talking for a while. This is going to be a 30-minute video. So I'm, fumbling over my words a little bit, but it'll get better as I continue to post more. It just will. My first TikTok videos were shit. Now I think the ones I post now are pretty good. So you're just going to have to bear with me for a little bit. But I appreciate you guys watching. Click the subscribe button. Thank you.